Hey besties, Monica Ferguson here and welcome to World Domination. This is a safe space for absolute legends who are bold enough and brave enough to go within, to recreate their belief system, to aim high, to chase their wildest dreams and become everything that they are destined to be. This is a space for people who are serious about growth, about healing. We talk about all things mind, body, spirit, and we have the courage to go further than most people even dare to dream. Welcome, let's get into it. Hey besties, welcome back. Monica Ferguson here and welcome to this week's episode, which is going to be very different to what I have done before. And one of the decisions that you really have to make, when you're in business, when you're online, when you're allowing people to see into your life via, social media and things like that, or a podcast in my case, is how much should I share? Like how vulnerable do I make myself? And this is actually a real big thing because sometimes it involves other people, and so sometimes you even question, like, am I protecting other people at the expense of myself, or am I holding back because I'm telling myself certain stories about what it means, that sort of thing. And as I was just stacking an enormous amount of firewood, I was contemplating, should I share exactly what's going on in this very present moment? Because that's another thing. It's really easy to talk about things in an optimistic way from the outside. Like, hindsight is a beautiful thing. And once you've gone through an experience and you've felt all the feels and you see what the point was, because there's always a point, right? Every hard thing that happens, there's always something happening. It's opening space, it's releasing something new will come in. So when you're in that space of, yay, I see why that happened and I'm so grateful and love and light, it's really easy to get on a podcast and tell people to, think like this and trust the process and have faith. What is not so easy is to show up in the process, and that's what I'm doing today. Okay, so as I have spoken about before, I think that if there was anything that was going to knock me off this whole personal development journey, this going after my business, my goals, my dreams, the number one thing that it would be is the relationships in my life and how they are impacted. Because every single time I grow, I have had to pay for it. And I do not say this to scare you off. I say it to prepare you. Because I really feel like a lot of the stuff that we see online is very follow your dreams and you only live once and, trust the process and all that kind of stuff. Make a vision board and live your best life. But the thing is that we're going to outgrow people on that journey. You're going to outgrow people that you thought were going to be in your life forever. And so there's constantly this question that's being asked of us, right? Which is, do I choose myself or do I choose them? Because if we're serious about what we want and what we're creating and choosing ourselves and our goals and our expansion, anyone who is not willing to grow with us is going to fall away. And it's not always pleasant. Sometimes it can be quite nasty if people project an attack because they get triggered. And sometimes it can be absolutely crushing, devastating, where you're crying and you can't breathe, and you feel like your chest is going to implode. And I'm going to share an experience that I've had. I'm already tearing up. I need some friends with me right now. But I'm going to share an experience that I'm going through right now just to show you guys how what it actually looks like to choose yourself in real time. What it looks like to walk away from people that mean so much to you because they don't want to grow and you do. And maybe when you met them, because this is what happens, right? We meet everyone when we're at the same level. So we attract people into our life because they mirror an aspect of us. And often it's an unconscious aspect, right? So let's say we have a real fear of not being worthy or a fear of abandonment. And so we attract people who are emotionally unavailable, right? Because they're the mirror of that. And so when I met this person, This was at the end of, I can tell you the day, I even remember the day, I remember the minute even, this is how specific. November 28th, 2023. That was the day that I met him in person. I met him the night before and online, right? Let's be honest here. Okay, so when we met, it was like instant connection, like just instant. Like we just became besties. We were committed in a relationship within 3 days. You know, we were building something, and I felt like I had found my best friend, like my absolute best friend, like my partner through life. Those were the conversations we were having, you know, like into the future. What do we want to do? Like it was a really big thing for me. I remember, you guys might remember in previous episodes I've talked about when and this was who I was talking about. Let's give him an alias. Let's call him Bob. But Bob is not a sexy name. We need a sexier name, like Trent. Okay, we'll call him Trent. So in previous episodes, I've referenced when Trent came to stay at my house for the first time, and my entire nervous system was on fire. I went into fight or flight. And the reason was because I had insane amounts of trauma. I had complex PTSD. Men especially were terrifying to me because of all the abuse and things in my childhood. So to have a man in my house, in my space, so close, my nervous system was not happy. Now, me being me, I had conscious awareness, right? So I was like, whoa, this is such a big deal. And because Trent was being lovely and amazing and sweet and supportive, and so I was like, okay, this is not real danger. This is past fear that's coming up. Okay, so I literally had to go and ground, sit on my lawn and meditate and try to calm myself down, calm my nervous system down. So this was how extreme my triggers were at the time. And so I really got to work, and I was deep in this work at this point. Like I was so deep in the work. The fact that I had enough awareness and I was able to communicate with him, like, this is how I'm feeling, this is what's going on. And he was like, it's all good, like, it's all good. And so we continued, right? We continued. And those sorts of triggers continued to reflect back to me. And so I was just like, okay, let me use this as a real example, as a real opportunity to learn what is still going on in my unconscious mind. Because when I'm single at home with my cats, these things are not getting triggered, right? So it's so easy to think, oh, I've got this, I'm healed, I'm amazing, I'm perfect. Like I've busted out of the matrix, like it's all good. And then I was rudely awakened. Okay, so you really heal in relationships. Relationships are the most intense mirrors and like activations for us, because it reflects back to us everything that's unhealed. And so yeah, I was deep in the work, man, and it was hard. It was hard. Now, after a few months, and it was not like perfect by any stretch. We were sort of wobbly and we were sort of growing together a little bit and trying to understand each other, but we were good and we were supporting each other, and the conversation started moving into what we want in the future, right? Like, which city will we live in? Like, being together forever. Like, it was, it was a big thing. We were really sure about each other. And this is the time when things started to implode. Now, here's the thing. Like I said, relationships trigger your very wounds back, right? And they're unconscious. So in my case, my triggers came up immediately. For Trent, they did not come up until things got real. So when we started having that conversation about, should we move in together? What should we do? Which he initiated, by the way. He initiated us being together. He initiated the I love yous first. He initiated the conversations about living together, traveling together, all these sorts of things. He brought this conversation up, and then he started getting scared. And because his triggers came up, and he did not deal with them the way I was. So we started having conversations, right, about what was going on, because what was starting to happen was that he would get close and then he would run away. And so what we can see very clearly now from, a mindset point of view is this is the dance between the conscious and the subconscious, right? Now, remember, the subconscious mind is 95% of our mind, and it is there for our safety and our survival. The conscious mind is this part that's talking to you right now, right? So consciously, he wanted it, right? That's why he was showing up. That's why he was calling. That's why we were in a relationship. Unconsciously, there was other stuff going on. And as we talked through it, we started to unpack a lot of his beliefs and experiences that were going on, that were firing off, causing him to run away. And it got pretty brutal, right? Because I was always leaning in. Like I was like, let's talk, let's, I'll support you. Like, let's work through it together. And he was just like, nah. And what happens is his nervous system totally shut down. Now, if you guys, I don't know if you know much about attachment theory. I'm going to keep it really short here, but most of us have heard of anxious attachment, right? So those are the people that you might think of as clingy or needy. It's not really the case, but that's how they're perceived, right? Then at the opposite end, we've got the avoidant, and these are, it's in the name, right? They avoid. Now, the important thing to understand here is that there are actually two types of avoidant people. One is dismissive avoidant, and these are all of these attachment styles, by the way, are formed in childhood, and they all come from varying degrees of like trauma or emotional neglect. So no one's good or bad or right or wrong here. It's just how we're formed, right? So you might recognize yourself in what I'm about to say. So like I said, we've got anxious at one end, and at the other end, we've got dismissive avoidant. Now, dismissive avoidant is the classic avoidant, and you will probably start to think of them as I talk about what it is. You'll recognize them in your own life. These are people who are hardcore independent, hyper independent loners. They do everything on their own. They don't trust people to help them. They don't let people close to them. And it's because as a child, they were taught that they had to do everything on their own. They're the sort of kids who were taught, like, no one cares about your feelings, go and cry in your bedroom. And so they learned that their needs do not matter, their emotions do not matter. So they started to feel like a burden. They felt like there's something wrong with them. So they carried this core wound of like not being worthy, not being good enough, right? And so Trent is a dismissive avoidant, right? Now, I also just want to touch on the other avoidant type because it's important for us to understand, which is fearful avoidant. And a fearful avoidant carries both the anxious side and the dismissive. So what this looks like in a person is a real push and pull. So they really want it, and then they run away and they snap back, and then they come back and they want it and they run away and they snap back. Dismissive avoidant is more likely to want it and then disappear, just suddenly drop you like cold as, because what they do is they actually detach from their emotions because their nervous system literally cannot handle the feeling. They get so overwhelmed, their nervous system literally shuts down and they what's called deactivate, right? They literally like power down, and they do that by removing themselves. So we probably all have seen that. Now, this is what was happening with Trent and I, right? So I was leaning in. I was like, here's a problem. Let's talk about it. Every time I did that, it triggered this fear in him of, oh my God, I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. She's saying that something's wrong. I've obviously failed her. I'm going to let her down. She's going to point out that I'm not good enough. She's going to hurt me. She's going to reject me. I can't deal with this. Run away. So obviously being on the receiving end of that over and over again, even though it actually wasn't about me or the way he felt about me, it hurts you, right? And so we did this dance for a little while, quite a while. And then in the end, I completely said, like, look, are you going to just continue to run? Because you know what's going on. Like, we'd talked through all this stuff. You know the fears and the beliefs you have. You have my full support to walk with you through this. Are you going to face this and, like, be with me or not? And he said, no. I have the strength to deal with this, basically. you're right. I have sabotaged everything. I have pushed you away, but I don't have the strength to deal with this. Like, I just want to live a really basic life on the surface. So for me, I felt like the rug had been ripped out, right? Now, here's where it got really challenging, was that this man was like my best friend. And so it's so hard to let go of someone when you don't want to. It was like my hand was forced. You know, it wasn't like, there was never any closure. There was never any, you know what, like, you know, I had fun playing with you, but it's time for us to go our separate ways, all the best kind of thing. That didn't happen. What always happened was he would like sabotage, snap back, run away, and I would be left feeling totally rejected and hurt and abandoned, and I would have to remove myself. He, in almost 2 years, never left me once. It was always me being like, I cannot and I will not like deal with this. Like, you don't get to like treat me like crap and then run away. And he would, for a long time, he would come back and act as if nothing had happened. And to the point that I think the longest time we went without talking was like 5 months. And then he came back and I was like, okay, cool. So what's changed? He's like, nothing. and this went on and on, right? And so then anyway, so obviously I wised up and I was like, I can't force you to change. I've literally bent over backwards to try to make this work, but it takes two of us, right? So in my head, I was like, right, I just have to move on. And it was really hard. And this is where today comes into the picture, right? Because this all went down like over a year ago, right? But he was always in the back of my mind, because as I was saying to my friend today in my sobbing voice message while I was driving, there's an episode of Sex and the City where Carrie says, if you love someone and it doesn't work out, where does the love go? And that popped into my head today, because you don't stop loving someone. If you actually love them, it doesn't just go away, you know? And especially when the problem was that I grew, right? If I had stayed the same version of myself when we met, we could have had some weird, toxic, unhealed relationship, right? But I was like, no, I'm going to grow, because I want to go all in with this person. Like, I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be the most loving partner that I can be. And he did not do the same work for me, right? He was just like, we had a conversation once and he said, you know, it's so hard. He said, you're my mirror. And as we talked about it, you know, he would share all these things with me and about how he didn't think he was worth it. He didn't think he was good enough for me. He didn't think he was worth it. He didn't think he had enough to offer. And I said to him once, when it comes to me, like, what is your biggest fear? And he said, losing you. And so to my friends who are watching this unfold over the last, 2 years, they were like, what? Like, his biggest fear is losing you. Yeah, he's literally pushing you away. And isn't that strange? But that's how the subconscious mind works. His biggest fear was losing me, so he literally pushed me away to avoid that happening. It's like it gives you a sense of control, right? Like if you create it first. Because in his mind, he is so convinced that if he truly let me in all the way, I would find out that he is not good enough and not worth it. And I would reject him and it would crush him. So in his mind, he thinks that he's protecting himself and he thinks that I'm better off, which is just insane, right? So anyway, that's all the stuff that had happened. And I have moved on. I'd been dating other people and all that kind of thing and open in the world. And today I was in his city and I had the strongest urge. Suddenly he popped into my head and I ended up driving. Like I was just like, I need to talk to him. I need to close this out in a nice way, because I was like, I cannot, even though, and it never felt closed. It never felt resolved, right? Because like I said, it was always me having to walk away and him just being like, oh, let's just stay friends and stuff. And I was like, but we're not friends. Like, but that was his way of trying to hold on to me, but not have to step up. Not once has he ever actually walked away. And so I ended up seeing him today and having this conversation. I just said, look, like, for me, this is about like honoring that it was real for me. Like, it was really real. Like, it was so real that it makes me want to cry again. Like, I ugly cried all the way home. It was so real for me. Like, this is, yeah. He was like my best friend. Like, he's like sunshine in human form. And it's just so interesting to learn, you know, like how these things work and how beliefs and things work. And like, I remember this time that he was here and he was cooking me dinner, my favorite meal, and he wasn't much of a cook, but he decided he wanted to cook for me. And he was in my kitchen and he was like dancing, and he was so funny. He's like, he just makes everything fun. And he was cooking this meal for me. And I remember this moment so well because I remember sitting there looking at him and thinking how grateful I was, like how lucky I felt. Like, it literally made me cry in the moment. I was like, whoa, like I literally did it. Like, I did all this healing and, you know, broke all these cycles in my family, and I get this with my best friend. Like, I'm so lucky. And he, at that same time, I remember him saying to me, he went to the bathroom to wash his hands and he saw himself in the mirror and he was like, oh my God, like I look so gross and so ugly and so old. Like, what does she see in me? And we were within meters of each other and we were having such polarizing experiences, you know? So anyway, I was in the car with him today and it was, yeah, just this conversation where I was like, I just wanted to, for myself, it wasn't about him, it was about myself, because I needed to close it out face to face. Now, when I say close it out, I haven't seen him for like, I don't even know how long, maybe 6 months or something. But because there was still some part of me internally, there was obviously some stuff that still needed to be released, right? So when I had that conversation with him and he was like, no, we can still be friends. And I said, you're not listening. I have to close this chapter out now. Like, I have to. And he, you know, it was this whole thing of, no, we can be friends. And I was like, no, you're not listening. And I let him see how hurt I was and how sad I was. And that's something that I wouldn't have done in the past. Because also I would have been afraid that he was getting triggered. But these little moments are so important on our growth journey, because that's real self-worth and self-love in action. Me taking up space, you know, me showing my true feelings and my true pain, and doing it because I wanted to express. It wasn't really about him, and I put myself first, right? Instead of walking around on eggshells wondering what he was going to do. And of course he got uncomfortable. With that, but so be it. And so I got to say what I needed to say, and then I got in the car and I ugly cried all the way home, and I feel like my chest is imploding and I feel sick to my stomach, and it has been two and a half hours since I left, and I feel like I'm going to go and collapse on the couch and sob. And it's like I said, these are the moments that you have to question. Like, you really have to question, what am I going to settle for? Because I could, if I wanted to, I could turn around and say, oh yeah, having you as a friend is better than nothing, right? I'd say, at least I get you in my life. But the thing is that, as I said to him today, we are not friends. We have never been friends. Since the first moment, we were not friends. And I couldn't, if I have to close this chapter and move forward, I couldn't do it with him in my life. Like, if he is not willing to lean in and face the parts of himself that he needs to face to be with me, then I'm not going to shrink my needs and my desires just to hold on. Instead, what I'm going to do is feel all of this pain, and it feels like grief. Do you know, this might sound super dramatic, but again, I just want to be honest about the journey. Like, I do not remember feeling this much emotional pain in terms of grief since my brother died. Like, literally since my brother died. in 2007. Like literally just my entire chest ached. I don't know if you guys can hear, there's gardeners outside chatting, so we might hear what the conversation is when we listen back to the episode. But yeah, these are the things, and so this is like a live moment of just what it actually looks like to choose yourself, to walk away from things even when it rips your heart out. That just because you do a lot of work on yourself doesn't mean that other people are going to come with you. And this is the hardest thing. And I feel like it's so counterintuitive, because you feel like when you work hard, you get a return, right? When you work hard, you get a result. And what I've found is when it comes to personal development, it's almost the opposite. You get a result in other ways, but in your relationships, a lot of the time you're going to outgrow people. A lot of the time you're going to have to let people go. Like, I think when I started the journey to now, I probably have 2 people in my life that are still here, that are still supportive and still loving, I'm also going to say is, by the way, I had to change rooms to avoid the chainsaw outside, so you might be able to hear it. Whatever, it's not perfect, so be it. It's real. What I'm going to say is still choose yourself anyway, because the hurt, the grief, the pain is here for a purpose. It's making space for what comes next, and we can't take it with us. And so often, right, this is why people don't grow, because they don't want to feel the pain or the grief or the fear or the regret or whatever it is, the hurt, so they just stay where they are to avoid feeling the pain. But they literally cut themselves off from ever getting anything better. And it's like, we just have to have the courage to feel an ugly cry and share and connect with people who get it. Allow it all to be felt, because it will move through, like even when it hurts, it will move through. And this is also one of the reasons I wanted to share this, was because like very soon we're going to see why. We're going to see what this opens up for me. And fully closing out this chapter and allowing the grief to be felt and witnessed and moved. And for me to feel like I felt a lot more in integrity for having that conversation face to face, because that's how I roll. I don't like tension and stress and yucky emotions. I want peace. And, I feel like I owed that to me and to him. Like no matter how hurt I got, I wanted within myself to feel that sense of completion and to be able to have that chance to actually say goodbye face to face and acknowledge like how important this has been to me. So like I say, very soon it's going to become very evident like why this happened and what it opened up for me. And so like I say, I was sort of like, should I share this? I'm like, yeah, I should, because I've had moments like this, not quite like this, but my absolute best friends doing horrible things and stabbing me in the back and stuff like that. Friends who I met 10 years ago is a very different version of myself, and it's that same thing. I grew and they didn't. And when you grow, like Trent says, you become a mirror, right? You become a mirror for everyone else, a reflection of what they're not doing. By you doing the thing and facing the things and moving forward, you are basically a big sign that says to them, hey, you're not doing this. And a lot of people don't want to deal with that, so they'll attack the mirror instead of the reflection, which is actually a real gift, right? For us to be able to observe, oh, hey, this is still coming up within me. So, holy smokes, man. That's my story for today. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Do the brave things anyway. Lean in. Have the courage to create the space. Because like I say, it will open up something. And that's why I'm sharing this now, that even in this grief and this pain and this like literal nausea, I still trust the process. I still know that even though, quite frankly, I want to die right now, like I want to crawl into a hole and just never come out, even though I feel like that right now and I'm going to cry a lot tonight, I also trust that this is clearing stuff, clearing grief, making space, and then another door will open really soon, and then I'll be able to come back and tell you guys like, oh my gosh, look at what just came into my life, and it will happen fast. So here's my record, right? So you guys can come back and check it out. So yeah, it's one of the hardest aspects of the journey, honestly. Both my parents completely turned when I stopped being a doormat. When I started putting myself first, I lost both my parents. My marriage, Trent, right? But I'm still moving forward. It's all happening for us. It's all happening for a reason. We trust the process. Thank you for being here. Send me your aha moments. See you next week. And that is a wrap. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for being here, and please let me know your aha moments. I want to hear all about them. For extra support, make sure you're following me on TikTok and Instagram at @TheMonicaFerguson. Check out the School of Greatness for self-study courses, and of course, if you want one-on-one mentoring, just DM me and I would love to have a chat with you. Go and slay the day. Thank you for being you. See you soon.